The universe is
But also
designed to
last,
bring you home. It's literally designed to bring you home. And as you go through your life, if you look at it through that lens, wait a minute, how is it trying to bring me home this time? Then you live a different life than someone who, oh, I'm a victim, oh, this world is so hot, or it's too cold, or it's too, I was born in the wrong time, or whatever. The difference between the victim and the hero is precisely that. Precisely that. The hero has enough insight, in a narrative sense, to realize that the whole thing is a setup. The whole thing from birth to death, it's a big setup. Where have you been?
recognizing my stickiness.
Stickiness to.
Everything, mostly verbal thoughts.
Fair enough. Those are tricky little guys. Questions?
I have a question about the master of the option.
Forgive me, I need to do something here with the audio. This will still work, but this should improve things. About master of the options. Go ahead.
Does the master of the option have the ability to be totally free from memory?
Memory doesn't have to stick, but memory is a feature of life. And so the problem with that question is when you say master, I draw a blank because I don't know what you're referring to. Tell me, who's the master?
Can I give you an example from
Okay,
Don Juan?
okay. But see how you're making a duality, right? And so depending on the
Mm-hmm.
level at which you want to answer that, you could either pretend that there is a duality or go at another level. So let's hear it from Don Juan, though, because it could be instructive.
This is Don Juan talking about controlled folly and seeing. So this is from a separate reality. Carlos asks Don Juan, how does a man of knowledge exercise controlled folly when it comes to the death of a person he loves? Don Juan was taken aback by my question and looked at me quizzically. Take your grandson Lucio, I said. Would your acts be controlled folly at the time of his death? Take my son Eulalio. That's a better example, Don Juan replied calmly. He was crushed by rocks while working in the construction of the Pan American Highway. My acts toward him at the moment of his death were controlled folly. And then Don Juan describes the death scene of his son Eulalio and says, I stood there too, but I did not look. I shifted my eyes so I would see his personal life disintegrating, expanding uncontrollably beyond its limits like a fog of crystals, because that is the way life and death mix and expand.
So his son was crushed by rocks while working at some mine in Mexico. Okay.
Yeah. Had I looked at him, I would have watched him becoming immobile, and I would have felt a cry inside of me, because never again would I look at his fine figure pacing the earth. I saw his death instead, and there was no sadness, no feeling. His death was equal to everything else.
Okay.
This is what I'm talking about,
So what's the question?
or what I'm asking. My question is, that seems like utter detachment. So the man of not, there's no,
Either other detachment or utter union.
yes.
You know, you've picked a very dramatic example. I don't know how old Don Juan was at the time, but let me speak as an ex-psychiatrist, and then let me speak also as you know, whatever I'm doing here. Witnessing a trauma like that, especially if someone that you care for, can lead to many psychological reactions. If there's nothing that can be done, it didn't sound like there was anything to be done. Dissociation is one of a quite common reaction of the psyche, of the human psyche. Okay? Now, Don Juan presumptively knew enough to know that his grandson had not died. Was it his son or his grandson?
His son.
Ouch, either one of them. Oh, watching your child be crushed to death, that's really heartbreaking. He knew that he had not died, but he had been transformed into another, or lifted, or I don't know, what did he say, crystals rising in the sky or something like that, some verbal metaphor for his spirit being subsumed by the great spirit, or the eagle, as he would put it, or some of the Naguals would put it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know where you get detachment from that, except for the psychological detachment.
That's what I'm talking about. The psycho. So
I mean, I don't know. Okay, first, and the other thing is he's talking to Carlos. So Carlos is probably in his mid-20s or early 20s, and there's much that Carlos cannot possibly understand. Plus, it's a very personal thing, you know, that he's sharing. And so, what of the thousands of different things that went on at the death of his son, the tragic sudden death of his son in a situation where he was helpless, he chose this one, I think, because that would help Carlos the most. But if you imagine your son being crushed to death, as you watch, weeping and wailing might not be indicated. However, I've heard stories of great masters of Tibetan Buddhism at the funeral of their teachers weeping openly, and why not? And it was something much more indicated by the circumstance. I mean, they were at a funeral, and I think one of the monks or something asked him, "Well, if you're so unencumbered and enlightened, why are you weeping?" And at this point, this is when, if it had not been Tibetan, it had been Zen, he would have gotten hit with a whisk, right? Because those kinds of either premeditated or preconceived or imagined notions of what enlightenment is like are all false. And so the enlightened man has complete freedom. On the other hand, if he's watching his son being crushed to death, he still has a mind, and the mind will move to defend itself in the face of overwhelming odds, to protect itself, or protect itself from overwhelming trauma or grief or whatever. And so I don't know what happened, but like so many other things, we could look at it at least at 4 different levels, and then if we really examined it at 100 or 1,000 different levels, what was really going on in his brain, in his mind, in his heart, in his spirit, you know, and I'm sure that it also moved. It wasn't just an instant. And then what we're talking about is a moment of memory. Now, was it a screen memory that encapsulates the whole thing? Or was this the condensation of a number of different memories? Or was this the fragment of memory that he wanted to share with some, you know, Chicano from California? Mm-hmm. So I don't think we can glean much from that particular example, other than, you know, this life is short and you never know when it's going to end. And you really never know who's going to die first or how. So the questions about memory, or the questions about I got lost in the scene, in the picture. I remember it also from his books, and it's very moving. So I've lost the question. What was the question?
My question is, if we take it less dramatic, and you're just sitting in the room right now that
Mm-hmm.
you're in, is it possible, kind of like the way Krishnamurti says, to look around without any memory of what all of the things around you mean? Like,
Oh
if
yes,
I look,
yes. But what Krishnamurti is describing is Satori. Yes, you can. I mean, you can, and that's the one of the central features of it. The whole world is as if it's brand new. It's like you've been reborn. There's nothing you don't remember. What these beautiful things and creatures and this world, you don't remember it, and so you're seeing it fresh, and there's no memory. I mean, you're not using that. You're not using your memory modes. You're using your direct perception modes. And that's one of the things that Krishnamurti doesn't say. He said, when he talks about getting rid of memory and getting rid of thought and getting rid of all these other human limitations, he's speaking of being in the state of Satori, waking up and staying there for a while. But he doesn't say, hey, this is called waking up.
mm-hmm.
And so some people get confused by that. But very frequently, if not most often, that's what he's referring to. He just doesn't refer to waking up or Satori or Kensho or, born again or anything like that. Because he hates religion. And he should know he started one. Yeah, no. I was a little overboard, but yeah, he started. The Theosophists, they made him the second coming, basically the teacher of the world, whatever. And he said, "To hell with all that stuff." So he was really, because he saw a church from the inside. He saw all the all the convolutions of politics and infighting and ambition and ego, etc. And he saw that as a young man from the inside. Usually kids don't get to see that part of the church, but he did. And so that's why he developed an allergy. Not just to his religion, but to all religions. And fair enough, they're built on thought and they're built by man, religions, but they do form the husk. The kernel is a spiritual truth for every one of them, a deep spiritual truth, every authentic religion. That help?
Yeah, that's it for that question. Last time we spoke, we only had a short time to talk about the Network of Loci practice, which I asked about. We got about a minute and a half, and you said that we could go into it a little bit more.
Okay.
So the way that you described it last time was the specific manifestation of it was if you were watching a movie, preferably a good movie, although you could do this with a TV show or something like that, you take on the point of view of one of the characters, not necessarily the main character, for the duration of the show. And you end up watching basically a different movie or TV show.
Or you're in a heated disagreement or argument with somebody else, and then you project yourself into them, and then you become the person arguing with you, and you look at it from the other side as you're going through it. That's fun too, and early on that's a gas.
So, question about that. I find it very difficult, although to some extent this is, I guess, me being lazy because it's hard for me, at least a little bit now, to take on the perspective of another person or another vantage point that's in the same room as me.
Okay, so you're good. So you acknowledge it's hard in the beginning.
Yeah.
But isn't that what empathy is, really? Empathy is not pity. Empathy is like not like saying, "Oh, poor person" or whatever. Empathy is sharing the world of another person, looking through their eyes, feeling with their heart. That's real empathy. No, and it takes practice, right? And that's why at least in Mahayana Buddhism, they spend quite a bit of time on this. The heart practices, the exchanging self for others. And there's others, like I forget the technical names.
So my question about that we didn't get to go into is when I was asking about how do you know you're not just making stuff up? Because if I take me as
You
I
are
am
just
and I
making
say,
stuff
all right,
up. You are just making stuff up to some extent. You've already made up the person. You've made up yourself. And you've created this world. So, I mean...
Oh, that's true, yeah. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
I mean, with yourself,
Okay.
let's just take yourself as an example. You've selected out of essentially an infinite number of ways of looking at the current situation, one.
Yeah.
And then you move to another, or you stick with that one. And this is how we create our worlds. That's the world we live in.
Yeah.
And so how is it that we make the selection of, let's just limit it to the brain, presumptively. There's 1,000 different ways to look at anything, but we pick one. How? Well, if we're smart, we've spent some time preparing our minds to where we automatically go for where there's the most yield. Right?
I'm not sure I 100% follow. Can you explain that?
Let's use a simple paramita, the paramita of patience or forbearance. Paramita being the little boats, as you know, the little boats that allow someone to cross over to the other side while they're still alive. They go from the mundane world to the absolute world, or from the relative world to the atemporal world, the world of reality, the realm of reality, as it's called technically. So one of those little boats, as you know, is called patience or forbearance. So if you've been studying or thinking about patience and forbearance and how you need to cultivate it because it's one of your boats or oars to get you across, when you go about the world and someone's rude to you, your mind is already preconditioned to say, hey, this is an opportunity to practice patience.
Okay.
Or the old lady at the grocery store, although they don't have those anymore, I realize now. Or do they? I mean, yeah, they do, but at some they don't have human checkers, but there used to be lines where people would line up and one person would pay for their groceries and the next person, the next person, the next person. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm used to. And she takes way too long. Now there's all kinds of reactions to that circumstance. Some people go out and smoke a cigarette. Some people read a magazine. Some people buy some candy. Some people shoplift some candy. There's all kinds of things you can do in that line, right? But a person having prepared their mind by knowing that this is a virtue that I want to cultivate, and you have a list of these, then you choose to look at the situation as a Buddha teaching, which it is, and a chance to practice patience or forbearance, which it is, and then you know that you've increased your capacity for patience and forbearance every time you do that. So by preconditioning your mind, by learning that you have a choice, you have free will in this world, your life is your decisions, and you've contemplated it and you thought to yourself, hey, I can go this way and my long-term outcome is much, much better. And so that's free will right there. And then you interpret things to that lens. Or you could interpret it through a Christian lens of charity. Right? Is that making sense to you?
That is making sense. So for the network of loci practice, it's like...
Well, that's not exactly network of loci. Network of... And so what we're doing is just variations on loci. Let me explain the loci practice. In an ancient Hindu model of the world, the reality, the universe, I should say, not the world. The universe is envisioned as a set of interlocking spider webs, infinite spider webs of silk, the size of the cosmos. At every intersection of these little, this web of silk, there's a multifaceted diamond, effectively infinitely multifaceted diamond. And so we have this beautiful net, and this net of jewels, really, of diamonds in this case. Now, if you were to look at any facet of any diamond, you would see the whole universe. You would have to. The whole universe would be reflected in any facet. So no matter where you go in the universe, there's the whole universe. And nothing can happen in any part of the universe that doesn't affect the rest of the universe. And so using this beautiful visual analogy, or metaphor, analogy, simile, or model is probably the best word. They help us understand better the reality in which we're embedded, because visual thinking is easier for most people. So that would be the net of a loci practice technically, in the original sense. Now, what we do in order to develop our minds and our capacities, and this is really important and very useful, is to, in a variation of that, or along that same theme, we look at ourselves like right now. I can look at myself from the ceiling. I can look at myself from a corner in the left-hand side of the room. I can look at myself from the floor on the right-hand side of the room. I can look at myself from the back. Now, I'm visualizing, and there's some imagination, and maybe, let's just call it imagination involved. But as you practice doing this, your mind becomes used to it develops this capacity to see things from multiple points of view. And you can shift your point of view, and then you realize your brain is not limited in your skull. And the world is more like the net of Indra than what you were taught in third grade in geography class. And so now you have a much richer way of thinking about the world and things in the world, or phenomena in the world. Now, going on from that practice, we get to this one where you exchange self for others. And an exercise for that, one of them might be, it shouldn't be a 4-hour movie, not at least in the beginning. You could start with a little short, or you could start with an anime, and instead of going along with the main character, you identify as much as you can with some secondary or tertiary character. And you just play around with it and see what your mind is capable of doing right now, and then you develop that capacity. Right? And it's just like that. Just, if you're going to go watch a movie anyway, or watch a show, or watch an anime or something like that, why not use it as a chance to practice? And then gradually your mind gets to the point to where, or in your heart and your spirit, because you've dedicated yourself to this endeavor of waking up, and this, the sooner the better, then all of life becomes religious or spiritual practice. Following me? And there's other variations that you can think of yourself, and I strongly recommend that you do that. And if you find relative weaknesses or relative strengths, exploit them, all with a dedication of of your will for enlightenment. You've got the universe at your back, all the bodhisattvas, all the saints, all the Buddhas, everybody wants you to win. Believe me. Okay, sir?
That's clarifying. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. The universe is designed to bring you home. It's literally designed to bring you home. And as you go through your life, if you look at it through that lens, wait a minute, how is it trying to bring me home this time? Then you live a different life than someone who, I'm a victim, this world is so hot, or it's too cold, or it's too, I was born in the wrong time, or whatever. The difference between the victim and the hero is precisely that. The hero has enough insight, in a narrative sense, to realize that the whole thing is a setup. The whole thing, from birth to death, it's a big setup. as if there were birth and death. There's just the appearance of birth and death, and the appearance of the world. Okay, sir?
Last time we made our way through the first roughly half of this teaching from the Treasury of the Eye of True Teaching, translated by Thomas Cleary, Teachings of Dawei, or
right.
resources Dawei is used for teaching.
Right.
And this specifically, just to remind people, was the reply of the national teacher of Qingliang to an imperial crown prince.
Okay, before we get there, may I just say, I'm not recommending this book unless you've already, gone quiet a ways, even after waking up. And so I'm not recommending that book to the general public. The one that I would recommend for anyone is this one. But people, maybe they've changed, or maybe, there are some people who are serious about waking up, in which case they aren't daunted by the fact that this sutra, it'll take 4 months, 20 minutes a day to read. And for others, there's all kinds of introductory texts to both Buddhism, Sufism, Taoism, and I presume Christianity, that all point to the same place. They all point in the same direction, to the same truth. What did Jesus say? This world is not my world, or something like that. The kingdom of heaven is with you, but he said something about my world is not, because he was king, right? They were mocking him. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. Boom. Is that correct? Didn't he say that?
I don't know if it's exactly like that. I know what you're referring to. I just forget the quote.
Yeah, and forgive me, I'm speaking European Christianity, not, or Roman, or whatever you want to call it, Roman Christianity, which has its roots in either Roman Catholicism or the Reformation. And there's a whole world outside of that of Greek Orthodox Christianity, of which I know very little, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. They kind of liked it that way. Okay. Now go.
Yes. So this is a Chinese Song dynasty teaching. During that dynasty, there was a national teacher at Qingliang, and this is his reply to an inquiry from the imperial crown prince of the time about, quote, the essentials of mind. We made our way through roughly the first half, and I think we can pick back up where we left off.
And folks should know that there's a YouTube of the whole reading, which is, I think, about 10-15 minutes long.
7 minutes, I think.
7 minutes, so it's very short, and you can find it on the list of YouTubes. All right, let's go.
If you forget perception, not minding, then myriad cogitations disappear. If you spontaneously know dispassionately, here is where all practices come from. Freed and allowed to go or stay, the quiet mind is aware of the source and stream. I have a question about that.
Okay, sir.
Freed and allowed to go or stay. What's being said here? The quiet mind is aware of the source and stream. So the quiet mind is freed or allowed to go or stay.
Well, read the line before that.
If you forget perception, not minding, then myriad cogitations disappear. If you spontaneously know dispassionately, here's where all practices come from.
All right, well...
Freed and allowed to go or stay, yeah.
So, the mind, as we discussed before, the mind is not a fixed abode. The mind is not fixed in time, it's not fixed in space, and even if it were fixed in space, the Earth is rotating, the galaxies are moving around, and those are kind of silly, concrete metaphors for the physical that's out there, but certainly, you can't say that the mind is fixed in space or time. Right?
Agreed.
Now, you can, if you attend to one thing, you're not attending to something else. But it's in its entirety, you can attend to the world the way some people do, which is concrete, real, and whatever the labels say, that's what it is. That's the end of it. Or you can be in the world where everything's in flux. Nothing has an inherent name, for God's sake, and everything is an expression of the artistry of God or truth or the creative force, or however you want to put it. Or you could leave the world altogether through a process that's known to people who are further along, because you can choose to be in this world or not at any time. And as a cousin to the Network of Loci practice, there's this practice where you can zoom in and out from an atom to the edge of the visible universe. And we try to promulgate that with limited success. But the point is that with the practice of the flower ornament scripture, or with just using YouTube and looking at some of these visualizations of the world as it actually is in the mind of a scientist, right? It's this grain of sand. If you look at it from another constellation, it's not even that. And if you look at it from the edge of the universe, it's so small as to not even be visible. Likewise, the same thing's true of the hugeness of the world if you look at it from the perspective of the atom or the molecule. And so freedom means being able to move wherever you want to move in terms of scale, in terms of position, in terms of size, And so if you go to the edge of the universe, let's say as a metaphor, then you've left the world. And these practices take practice, but they're very easy for someone who's awoken. That makes sense? But to awaken, you have to practice. I mean, there's a beautiful passage in here. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it real quick. All right, here we go. This is from just a short reading from Entry into the Realm of Reality, which is the last book of the flower ornament scripture. Some beings become mature by remembering me for a day and a night. Some become mature remembering me for a fortnight. Some a month, some a year, some a century, some an eon, some 100 eons, and some up to as many eons as atoms in untold Buddha lands. Some become mature remembering me for one lifetime. And just because I can't resist it. Some become mature by seeing my radiance, some by seeing the emanation of light beams, some by feeling the earth quake, some by seeing my physical form, some by being encouraged. Thus beings become irreversible towards supreme perfect enlightenment through as many means as atoms in a Buddha land. Furthermore, whoever hears of the purity of my Buddha land will be born in a pure Buddha land. And whoever sees the purity of my body will be born in my body. Behold the purity of this body of mine. It's so similar to Christianity. It's quite remarkable. But that's an esoteric read on that. So it just kind of threw me. It's so beautiful. Where were we? Sorry.
No, you clarified my question. That was
what? They're laughing at me. It distracted me. Go ahead.
I'll let them finish.
Okay.
That was clarifying. That helped. That was helped my question. So
okay. Good. Oh, good. And that book will send you. Let me tell you, it will. And that's what it's designed to do: is to open your mind. And once it's open, you don't have to worry about keeping it open. It's open.
Not losing the mystic subtlety, whether speaking or silent.
Oh, wait a minute. Being aware of source, being aware of the source and the flow, right? Did we cover that?
Freedom allowed to go or stay, the quiet mind is aware of the source and stream.
Okay, the source and the stream.
Mm-hmm.
So the source is quiescent. The source does not move, just as go to Parmenides if no one else. But God is not. Never mind. I shouldn't go down that route because I use the word God in front of it, and also we don't. But what moves is the world. What moves is thoughts. What moves is phenomena. That's what moves. Mm-hmm. The source does not. So you can be in the source and watch the myriad comings and goings, the phenomenon, the this or the that, whatever. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. So it's like being on the bank of the river and being able to be on the bank, be the bank, and also be the river. All right? Okay, next question.
Not losing the mystic subtlety, whether speaking or silent, action and repose never leave the realm of reality. In terms of cessation, it is silent knowing, forgetting both. In terms of observation, it is silent knowing, perceiving both.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can put it better than that. Why don't you read that again slowly for folks?
Yeah, I don't. Okay. Not losing the mystic subtlety, whether speaking or silent.
Okay, so this disabuses people of the notion that you have to be sitting there in the lotus position and you're not moving or whatever. You got to be in this meditation. That's just ridiculous. Another thing that people need to be disabused of, just as an aside, if you go to a text like this, an authoritative text, you find that half the teachers of Sadhana were women, or almost half of them were women. And because the monks, you know how men are, they like to take all the glory for themselves. And so just keep that in mind. This is as much for women as for men. And this sojourner, Sudhana, this archetypical Buddhist seeker, was taught by almost as many women as men. And I think that's striking, and it's much more accurate. People mistake this whole enterprise for an enterprise of monks. Right? It couldn't be more wrong. Couldn't be more wrong than that. And Clary was very, very adamant about making that clear. Okay, so let's go back. I'm sorry.
Not losing the mystic subtlety, whether speaking or silent.
Mm-hmm.
Action and repose never leave the realm of reality. In terms of cessation, it is silent knowing, forgetting both. In terms of observation, it is silent knowing, perceiving both.
Yeah. You're in the world, but not of the world.
Speaking of experience, it cannot be pointed out to another. Speaking of principle, it cannot be understood without experience.
In the final analysis, yeah.
Yeah.
So non-duality without awakening, cannot be given by intellectual means or verbal means. Maybe I should have said Satori or Nirvana. I tried to soften it a bit, but I can't really. So Satori, Nirvana, Kensho, these things cannot be described verbally and have to be experienced. And then once you've experienced that, the principles become trivial, literally trivial. And so what we're doing now is we're struggling through this because we're trying to help other people who are actually us. We're trying to help ourselves awaken, the whole world awaken, the whole universe awaken. And we've been doing this for a long time, and we're in the way that matters. We're actually making good headway. But people on this earth can't grok the way that matters yet.
Therefore, when you realize silence, there is no silence. true knowledge has no knowledge. I have a question about that.
Which one?
Uh,
When you put these, remember these thing is, every one of these lines is just really loaded with.
Yeah, my question is specifically about the first half. When you realize silence, there is no silence.
Correct. Just that's almost a recapitulation of the line before it that says, whether speaking or silent, you're still in the source. Read the line. I think it's 2 lines up. Here, let me pull it out.
Yeah, not losing the mystic subtlety, whether speaking or silent.
Whether speaking
Action
or
repose.
silent. Okay. Whether speaking or silent, whether moving around or sitting still or lying in repose, none of those things matter. You're always in the source. It's either it would be guest and host, or guest and guest. I mean, host and host, sorry. Using that other terminology. If people want to understand it, they have to go back a few videos. So whether speaking or silent, right? So therefore, when you realize silence, there is no silence. That's like saying, so you wake up, the world keeps going on, but there's utter silence. I don't know how to say it. I mean, it's just the fact.
Yeah, well, what's getting me is that I guess maybe I'm being too fixated on the words. Like I said, I'm sticky.
Okay, so one is entirely silent. When can you imagine this? Imagine you are silence. Imagine
that
you
makes
never
sense.
move.
Yeah.
Okay, but meanwhile, in the world, there's all kinds of noise going on. But it's not really noise.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Okay, good.
But the omnipresence of silence. Okay. When you realize silence, there is no silence. Is confusing because silence is omnipresent across time and space, as far as I can tell.
It's beyond time and space.
Yeah, it's beyond time and space.
Within time and space, you can have a big as record as you want. You can have Metallica playing at full volume. There's still silence.
Yeah. There's still silence there, yeah.
Next phrase.
So then what is there is no silence? What is there is no silence?
Well, when you realize silence, there is no silence. When there's silence, remember, we're talking about, let's see, how should we call this? The apparent world and the real world.
Okay.
In the real world, there's silence. In the apparent world, it's noisy as hell. There's crows and birds and animals and cicadas, and you see, you're still thinking dualistically. Or and I'm not sure. I'm not. This is not getting across. I can tell it, but that's okay. I think you've got enough to move on. And then we can come back if we need to and talk about it, because it's a poetic wording of sorts, but it's both speaking to.
I mean, it makes sense from the perspective, from the real perspective, from the
real. And this one.
There's no silence, obviously. You wouldn't call anything silence. That doesn't make sense. There's no need to call it silence.
Okay.
Because it's not separate from I don't know. It's the wording that's getting me, I guess.
That's right, and you need time. All of these things take some time. You have to let them sit, but there's a. I mean, we got to be careful because we're pulling the legs off the ants, right? And we're going to end up with nothing at all. But look at the next line, or the next phrase. True knowledge has no knowledge. Does that make sense to you?
That one makes more sense, yeah.
True knowledge has no knowledge? Makes more sense than when you realize silence, there is no silence? Okay.
But
tell me how it makes sense. True knowledge has no knowledge.
So when I read, when you realize silence, there is no silence, that doesn't make sense, because there's always silence and knowing and reality. These are one and the same. So to say there is no silence doesn't make much sense to me. But then again, from the point of view of reality, there obviously is no, quote, silence, because there is no anything that you would put a name to. True knowledge has no knowledge makes sense because, well, anything that I would call knowledge is not true knowledge. Like in this,
that's not the way I would interpret that.
Okay. Well, like any true knowledge has no.
Okay. Look at me a
Every
moment.
knowledge that I know.
Over here for a second.
Yeah.
Who's going to have the knowledge?
Good point.
Okay. Next line.
With the unified mind, in which knowing and silence are not two, harmonize with the centered course in which emptiness and existence merge together.
That's a little advanced. We should leave that for people that can grok it. But that's basically a non-dual, just non-dual, standard non-dual stuff. But it comes from the advantage, remember, of a very high illuminate. So it's got more than that, but we could gloss over it by just saying that's non-dual stuff, just vanilla non-dual. Well, no, actually no, because I mean when they merge together, now that's more advanced. So there's the mundane mind, and then there's awakened mind early. The mundane mind believes in subject and object. The awakened mind in the beginning believes that things are non-dual. The further awakened mind then sees the relationship between the non-existent and the existent. And in this line, he's saying that they merge together, which is right there. That's a contemplation right there for the serious and more senior student. I'm speaking to the audience here, so none of this is personal. Okay, next, or shall we stick with that?
No, let's continue.
We're walking a real balancing here because it's going to confuse some people. It's going to frustrate some people.
Yeah.
It's going to hopefully invigorate some people. And some people are going to go, wow, I didn't know that passage was out there. That's interesting. And then they go to the YouTube thing where it's down on it's spelled out underneath the video. Okay. Go ahead.
Not dwelling, having no fixation, do not absorb, do not take in. Affirmation and negation gone, subject and object are both obliterated.
Just gorgeous.
Yeah. That makes sense. When this obliteration also ceases, then insight appears.
See, that's the sophisticated part.
When
you stopped it, and now that you stopped the obliteration, now we can talk about merging. So, like I said, this is highly advanced teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Not the final teaching, but it's it's just fun to watch these guys be so brilliant back in the 12th century, right? Which might as well be last week. Literally. Okay, what's the question?
About the next grouping of lines.
Oh, is there a grouping? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Insight is not produced outside the mind. The nature of wisdom is originally inherent, but it is basically quiescent and cannot manifest itself. In actuality, it depends on achievement of wisdom. Insight and wisdom complete each other. The basic wisdom and the applied cultivation are really not two entities. When both disappear and you penetrate experientially, then subtle awareness is round and clear. Couple questions on that.
Okay.
Grouping. First, we discussed this some time ago It's early on in the channel. There's a video, short, 5 minutes, called Insight and Wisdom,
Okay.
discussing the two of them. And so my question is about that insight and wisdom complete each other. The basic wisdom and the applied cultivation are really not two entities. When I asked you about insight and wisdom all that time ago, you talked about the distinction of the basic insight, which is awakening, moksha, satori. It's that insight of the naturelessness of phenomena, emptiness, intrinsic, yeah. And then wisdom, you described as, well, we still live in this world with wars and thieves and other characters and people, and wisdom is this body of knowledge of how to live in this world as a mature, understanding person. Is that what's going on here?
No.
Insight and wisdom complete each other? No. So yeah, please describe.
Okay, so you know how
going on here.
Words can change meanings and often change into their exact opposites. Okay?
Of course, yeah.
Now we're going back.
Yeah.
So that right there requires a certain humility when reading any text, right? But in this case, the best I can tell, wisdom applies to the actual being in the state of quiescent, open awareness, creative awareness. Whereas insight
is basically quiescent.
And so an insight refers to understanding emptiness, understanding the impermanent nature of all things, understanding how things are all provisional, that nothing exists inherently. It's like understanding the principles, some of the principles in this case, Buddhism. Right? Now, ultimately, those two things, just like in the non-dual understanding of true knowledge has no knowledge, when you realize silence, there is no silence. If you have wisdom, then insight melts into it because there's nothing there. It's hard to describe it. It dissolves. Now, I could have reversed the words just now. I don't know. But wisdom and insight are being used as for a temporary distinction for teaching purposes, as a teaching device. Wisdom and insight are divided. And then he acknowledges that they're actually, one of them dissolves into the other. I believe.
That makes sense.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right, good.
Here
it's in actuality it depends on achievement of wisdom, so that means you got to wake up. You got to wake up.
And then the basic wisdom and the applied cultivation are really not two entities. That's what you're talking about. The basic
Something
wisdom
like that.
is, and applied cultivation is all that emptiness, interdependent origination, signlessness, all of that kind of thing.
Correct.
All right. How are we doing on time?
Well, let's do this. I think it's important, and we have a video of this that people can refer to, and we have the text written down. So it'll be useful to folks, I'm hoping, and so let's do it. Let's finish it up. Let's get through this thing, and then we can always come back to it. But let's get finished starting.
Yeah.
How's that? Let's finish starting.
Yeah. As beginning and end merge, cause and effect interpenetrate. Being a Buddha in every state of mind, no mind is not the mind of Buddha. Realizing enlightenment in every place, there is not a single atom that is not a Buddha land.
There you go. I love this. Cause and effect interpenetrate. See, that's David Hume. And even to this day, we deny the fact that we have no idea of causality, really, scientifically. But this brilliant Scottish philosopher David Hume pointed out that we have no clue about causality. It's beautiful, and it's hilarious, and it's moving, and it's also kind of endearing and fun to watch our scientists struggle against the truth, right? And so they get to relativity, they go, oh, we got it now. And then they get to quantum mechanics, they go, oh, no, we didn't get it. And then, oh, we got it now. And then, oh, no, we didn't get it now. And then they're having to get rid of time and space. And it's just like, I love humans. They're beautiful, and this is the most endearing thing. I love it. All right, let's keep going. Sorry, I get lost in the beauty of
So
all this.
whether truth and falsehood or others and self, when you bring up one, the totality is included.
Yeah. So for people for whom this is not immediately obvious, if you say dark, you've created light. If you say hot, you've created cold. This is basic Taoism, right? Basic, if you say tall, you've created short. If you say short, you've created tall. If you say heavy, you've created light, so on and so forth. So if you say truth, you've brought up falsehood. That's why they're interdependent or depend on each other. When you say falsehood, you've automatically created truth. All right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with self. I love it. See, in one sentence, this guy's just amazing. All right, next. Or do you have a question on that?
No, that makes sense.
I think that's
Buddha,
just a principle of logic also. I don't know, but it sounds like it should be.
That's what came up to mind. Like I was thinking, I already brought up self, but if I say, you can't distinguish a single thing out here without
creating its
bringing
absence.
Up everything. Yeah.
All right.
Mind, Buddha, and living beings are as a whole ultimately equal.
Correct.
So we know that when they are deluded, people follow things. And since things have myriad differences, people are not the same.
People are not the same.
But when people are enlightened, things follow people.
This is so
Everyone
cool.
Everyone has one wisdom that clarifies myriad objects. Can we explain that one a little bit? Things follow people specifically, as opposed to people follow things.
So, if you're resting in just consciousness, or I'm going to oversimplify, and I don't want to take away from the beauty of this thing either, and I don't want this to be a substitute for actually pondering over this. But when you're a person, things happen to you. Let's see, what does it say? People follow things. No, when you're a person, an ordinary human, mortal as they call it in Zen, you get interested in something, you follow it. You're following politics, you're following, a car down the, cars, and you're looking at different cars or trees or whatever it might be. You follow things. When you just sit in consciousness, you just watch this display coming right in front of you. Around you too. In the movie, people follow things. If you're watching the movie, let's see.
Yeah.
Things happen on the screen. But if you're in the movie, you're the one trying to make things happen or not things happen, or things not happen. Mm-hmm. It's a different perspective. So let's see if I can do this any better. It's hard to do it better than this guy. This guy's a master of articulation. So, but just kind of keep that in mind. What's the difference between following things? No. And again, the way it's articulated. So we Clary, Thomas Clary, an enlightened master who within a few hundred years will be considered, one of the greatest saints of it's not even, he's post-religion too, so it's not just Buddhism, but Buddhism and Taoism at any rate. Mind, Buddha, and living beings are as a whole ultimately equal. So we know that when they are deluded, people follow things. And since things have myriad difference, people are not the same. But when people are enlightened, things follow people. So you're just sitting there and the world appears. This world appears. Like, whoa. This world. Out of all the worlds, this world. appears. And so it's a way of speaking. Things follow people. I didn't do a good job there, and I apologize. But it's something like, if you think you're in the movie, if you think you are in a movie and you're a character in a movie, and all kinds of things are happening to you because you think you're a character in the movie. But when you wake up, you realize you're watching the movie. You're not the movie, right? And even your body, the corpse you're dragging around, is not you. It's just something following you around. I love the Zen say, "Who's dragging this corpse around?" They say this to the student. Who's dragging this corpse around? No, I didn't articulate it well. Anyway, but to get the words, all right? Even if the articulation is not too good. Yeah. All right?
When words are exhausted and thought is ended, what is effect? What is cause? The essence is fundamentally silent. What is the same? What is different? Just forget what's on your mind. Be empty and clear, and your comings and goings will be peaceful and harmonious, like moonbeams penetrating water, immaterial yet visible, unmindingly mirroring images, reflective yet always empty.
So maybe we could take this and use it, because I was so clumsy with this things follow people. If you're the reflective surface, things come and go. If you're not the reflective surface, if you're deluded, common mortal or whatever, as they put it in Zen, then you follow those things that come and go. You think they're real. It's a difference in perspective. But let's read when essence is fun. Let's start there and just read that again, because I want to end on that, because I'm told that endings are really important. The last two sentences, please. The essence is fundamentally silent. Would you read that, please, for folks?
Yeah. The essence is fundamentally silent. What is the same? What is different? Just forget what's on your mind. Be empty and clear, and your comings and goings will be peaceful and harmonious, like moonbeams penetrating water, immaterial yet visible, unmindingly mirroring images, reflective yet always empty.
Stuff just sends me, and it'll send you too if you spend some time with it. It's gorgeous. And again, the reflection of the moon on the surface of a pool's kind of nice, because you can see it sink to the bottom, and you can't always do that with a lake. And then you can see another moon on the bottom of the pool, and so but you can see those moonbeams, but are they there really? And what are they made of? So, I hope folks like it. Any other thoughts or questions before we stop?
On this specifically, no.
Anything else, real quick?
I do have one quick question about. I noticed recently how much this body-mind is classically conditioned. I'm talking in the psychological sense, like literally stimulus, response, coupling the two together. And even in the face of recognizing...
For people who want, just real quickly, let me just explain classical conditioning. Most people, if you hold a lemon in front of them and say, then in a few moments, I'm going to ask you to bite into this lemon, or, it's peeled, half of it's peeled, your salivary glands will start to tense up. That's classical conditioning. Well, that's classical conditioning as opposed to operant conditioning. So that's what he's referring to, classical conditioning. His body responds automatically to a stimulus. Keep going. And the stimulus is a natural one. That's the difference between operant and classical.
So maybe, then I might be thinking of how my body is operantly, or has undergone operant conditioning.
There you go.
So one example is
operant conditioning.
Yeah. One example is I am hyper aware of the slightest buzz in my environment because of my phone. I keep the dings off and I have it just vibrate. And if I feel a vibrate, like sometimes the phone's across the room and I can feel the vibrate or slightly hear it or whatever, and I turn my head, and I also notice other people do the same thing. And I know there's such thing as extinction of the conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
How can I get away from that, or is it even realistic too?
Actually, that's an interesting question, because I was going to say all you have to do is stay away from your phone for a while, and that it'll naturally extinguish. But now I'm thinking, is there a way to do that? Well, you could have it. The way to, if you really wanted to extinguish it, what you do is you have your phone buzz, but nothing's happening on your phone. You go there and the phone's dead, or there's nothing there. I mean, there's nothing new there. And you just let that happen over and over and over, and pretty soon you realize that, hey, just because the thing's buzzing doesn't mean anything's happening. And then you've extinguished it.
Oh.
That's how you would do it, technically. So it wouldn't be enough. I mean, you could also just wait enough time, but the best way to do it, so the way we do this with pigeons and dogs and other creatures is they'd push the lever and they wouldn't get the reward. And you have to do that repeatedly, because if you just take them out of the experimental room and leave them for 2 weeks, when they come back, they still want to push that lever because they still think they're going to get some food, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you actively teach them the opposite, then you can extinguish it. But it may not be necessary for that.
Realistically, you can't do that because you'll run into the worst problem of variable reinforcement, because sometimes my phone is going to buzz.
Very good.
It's going to be the thing I'm looking for. So...
Oops. Sorry. I wasn't laughing at you. But you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Good. Good. So let's think it through things. Let's think it through things.
So the modern human being, how can you even get away from, like, realistically, can you get away from conditioning to the phone?
Well, I mean, you got to be more specific to the
right,
vibration.
So there's a bunch of these, but I'm just sticking with this one because I want to.
Where are you going to get your news? Where are you going to get your weather? Where are you going to get your Amber Alerts or whatever else you follow?
No. Of course. I'm not going to ditch the phone, but
you could. You could go completely sane. It's hard to do in the modern world. What if the boss wants to get a hold of you?
A different job.
Yeah. See what I mean?
But I'm thinking of the buzz right now, just specifically.
Well, change it to a ring-a-ling. Change it to this.
Then I'll just get conditioned to that.
Change it to this. Instead of the buzz, have it do this. And the buzz thing will go away. It will.
Yeah, but then
and that happens to the rest of this frequency. Okay, so the buzz, right? You're sensitized.
Yeah.
And you have associative learning to the buzz. If you replace that with a different stimulus, instead of a lemon, right, you put a banana. then this will extinguish, the parotid glands will extinguish, that particular response will extinguish, and a new one will occur. But it'll be to this one. And hopefully that won't happen as often. Hopefully your phone won't do that as often. As a strategy. But good, these are fun experiments. These are fun thinking problems. And just like in the old days, we'd have to build a sawhorse out of boards, or we'd have to build a ladder with what we had, or whatever. Now you got to figure out a way to get your friggin' phone to be your servant rather than your master. And so keep thinking about it. That's good. That's good. And by the way, folks, with this, what did we call it? Did we call it a poem or a teaching in response to the teacher to the Crown Prince of China, which is pretty amazing. What did we call it?
It's a written reply.
Okay, written reply.
To a question.
When you go through this line by line yourself and contemplate each one of these and say, well, and ask yourself, well, how much do I understand this really? Or what do I not understand? Because otherwise, if you just listen to this and don't go any further, then that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. We really want to encourage people to go to source texts whenever possible, because then once you're familiar with these source texts, these are going to be very, very valuable in the future. That's all we're going to have, because the machine sure as hell can't do this. Has no idea what we're talking about. And those areas, people want to know what are they going to do with the new world and the new transition and all this stuff, and the machines are doing everything that our cortex can do. Our cortex up here can do. Well, we're a lot more than a cortex and a limbic system. A lot more than that. And so we got to represent, folks. Okay? Anything else before we start?
No, that's good for now.
All right. Keep on trucking. Good, good, good. Ciao.